Welcome back, and in today's video we are going to talk about whether or not you should write a memoir. A lot of people consider writing them. There are a few things to consider, so this video is going to go over 3 considerations. I recently published a memoir. It is right here, and I will put it here. So I'm going to talk about 3 lessons that I learned in the process of writing and publishing it. We're going to talk about traditional versus self-publishing. We're going to talk about the market, and we are going to talk about some logistics. So if that interests you, I hope you'll stick around to the end. If you're new here, my name is Jocelyn. I've been working in the media industry for 20 years, and I created this channel because I wanted to help other people learn how to freelance, learn how to self-publish, learn how to make a living with their writing. I've been freelancing for many years, probably the whole time. Even when I had editorial positions, regular 9-to-5 positions, I was also freelancing on the side, and I've worked in and around book publishing as well. I've edited books, I've ghostwritten books. So my goal here is to help you learn how to navigate the process by using my experiences and my fails and various lessons learned to help you along your path. So talking about a memoir. There's going to be 3 main points that I'm going to go over. The first one is going to be the why and the how. The second is going to be market considerations, and the third is going to be logistics. So starting out with the why and the how. I've probably interviewed thousands of people over the course of my career, and I can tell you without question, every single person has a story that deserves to be written. So if you're thinking about writing a memoir or an autobiography, absolutely, I 100% support your decision to do that. I think that the deciding factor that you should think about is why you're writing it. So for example, I'll speak from my own experience. My book is about, I lived in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina, and the book is about the time that I lived there. My boyfriend at the time and I didn't evacuate, so it's about what happened during the flood, and it's about the year after, where we were working on rebuilding, and I worked in documentary film, and I worked on a lot of projects that were about rebuilding. So that's the book. Now, when I first started writing the book, I had no intention of publishing it. I had no intention of making it into any kind of story. It started out because through my process of grieving and my process of sorting out everything that happened, I was writing essays about various things which were just helping me process, helping me understand what was going on. It was part of my therapy, basically. And over time, I began to realize, I have some things to say that I think will be relevant to the larger conversation of what happened in the city. And I started to shape it into a book. I ended up going and doing an MFA in nonfiction creative writing, where I spent 2 years just workshopping it and doing all those things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about traditional publishing versus self-publishing in a minute, but my point in saying this is it doesn't have to be a big dramatic reason or a big event. I mean, everything matters. And one thing I will say is that a lot of big feelings are going to come up. And if you are thinking about writing a memoir and you haven't started yet, keep that in mind, that it is a process and there are going to be difficult aspects of it. I can make a whole series on memoir writing, but at just high level, keep in mind that there's going to be a lot of personal stuff that will come up in the process of writing it. Make sure that you have support. Make sure that, if that means, a writing group, if that means a therapist, if that means, whatever that might be, depending on what you're writing about, absolutely make sure that you are supported in the process. I was very fortunate to have, both creative people around me, and also people who were able to emotionally and psychologically support. So, I would just say it might bring up a lot. Make sure that you feel supported in however you're planning to approach this. Okay, so that's number 1. And also a little side note on that, I didn't let anyone read any of it until I felt comfortable with it, and I felt, parts of it were getting workshopped, obviously, but by that time I was already pretty far into the process, so I had lived with it long enough that I was able to turn it into a narrative And that's another part of it too, is that you have to be able to get to a point where you've separated yourself from the content enough that you can shape it as a narrative. And that doesn't mean making stuff up, okay? That just means you have to be able to remove yourself enough that you're able to see character arcs, you're able to see it as a novel, or not a novel, but as a narrative with a narrative thread. And it takes a while to get to that point sometimes. I will say I started writing this book 15 years ago, more than that. But it's been a long time. And then I had to put it away for a while. And I'll get into that in a little bit when I talk about the market. So basically, why are you doing it? And then to decide, do you want to traditionally publish it, or do you want to self-publish it? And that's where we're going to start talking about the market. Now, when I was writing my book, it was about four to 5 years after the flooding of New Orleans. So at that point, market-wise, all the Katrina books had kind of already come out, and there really wasn't a market for it. I had several, great agents who were very interested in the work, but were very honest with me and said, look, the moment has passed for these books right now. It's kind of too soon afterward, but not, that sort of 4 to 5 range. There wasn't a market. There was, at that time, Katrina fatigue, which people were talking about. There were already several big books that had come out about it. So it was kind of like, if you're writing about something that's tied to a specific event, there's going to be sort of like a moment where a lot of stuff is going to come out, and then people are going to lose interest. The market will lose interest for a while. And then you need to time it with like a 10-year, or 15-year, 20-year anniversary of the event. Now, if you're writing about something that's more evergreen, like I can think of a million things, but like a book about grief, or a book about things that are timeless and not tied to a specific event, you don't have to worry about that. I will say market considerations will be different if you're trying for traditional publishing. For the most part, you will be expected to do your own book marketing. You will be expected to, come with your own plan. When you're doing your book proposal, you will have in there, comparable books, your marketing plan, how you plan to reach people. And I can do a whole video on book proposals. Let me know in the comments if you would like to see that. That's no problem. For me, I knew that I really needed to build a large email list. I needed to have a big social media presence. I needed to build all these things. And I'm not really comfortable doing that. I'm kind of an introverted person. I like working behind the scenes. I do a lot of ghostwriting, and I do a lot of corporate writing and things where I'm not the person out front. So for me, and I don't really like being on social media, and I was into the whole analog living thing, like before it was a thing. So that's just not it's not my thing. It's not my area of expertise. It's not where I like to hang out. So that really put me at a disadvantage for traditional publishing, which is fine. I didn't feel like really pursuing that. So that's something to consider, is that if you are trying to go the traditional publishing route, you're going to need to be willing to market your book, be willing to go out there. You're still going to market your book regardless, even if you are publishing it yourself. So I just put that out there so that you're aware going in. I think that sometimes writers think, oh, well, I'm going to write this book, and then I'm going to get a big advance for it, and it's going to be traditionally published, and the publisher is going to take care of all the public relations and the marketing and all that. And it's just not really how it works unless you're already a big name. You already have a presence, right? So that is something I wanted to mention. So I'm going to check my notes. I kept my notes down. Okay. Oh, yes. So on that, marketing. If you're writing a book proposal because you want to get traditionally published, please don't count on AI to do the market research for you. I just, for kicks and giggles, tried a couple of different AI platforms to try to do a book proposal for my book, and I was like, oh, let me just see what they come up with. And they were good. They weren't terrible. But the comps that they come up with, which is the comparable titles, which is where you look at other books that are like yours and how they did and all that kind of stuff. Like, it hallucinated titles. It left out real titles that should have been included. So you do have to know your market, know your niche, know kind of other books that have been published like yours. Because you have to be able to know if the AI is just making stuff up or not. AI is very helpful and I do use it a lot, but that was one thing that I just really got a kick out of. I was like, oh gosh, imagine if I had like just done this, and yeah, it would have been embarrassing. So finally, let's talk about logistics. If you are going the traditional publishing route, what you will do is you will make a book proposal, and you will have different sections in there, and there are a bazillion videos and blog posts on what to include and books on what to include in your book proposal. And if I have time, I'll do a quick blog post and link it in the description. If not, there are a million out there, and I'll do one at some point. So that's that. And then you will go find an agent. That agent will help you find a publisher. If it's a small publisher, you can go directly to a small publisher. I will say that, it's a little more difficult to get traditionally published these days. There's just, sadly, it's just kind of tough to do. You don't see a lot of big advances. If you're hoping that you make a lot of money off of this, I don't know that that's necessarily realistic, but I'd still say do it. Obviously I did it, but if you decide to go the self-publishing route, which is what I decided to do, when I decided to pick the book up again, because this year was the 20-year anniversary of the city flooding, I said, you know what, I don't even want to mess with publishing through a publisher. I already have an LLC. I already was publishing books for other people, so I already know the process. I already have an account with the Library of Congress, so I can do the PCN process, which I'll talk about in just a second. So I already know how to do it. I already know how books get bought for libraries and booksellers. I already know, Baker and Taylor and blah, blah, blah. I'm already familiar with the system, so I knew I could just publish it myself. That said, if you decide to publish yourself, there are a few things that you are going to want to do. You're going to want to register your copyright. I know that technically that's not, people say, oh, that's not really necessary because, you have copyright claim, you have copyright ownership the minute you produce a work, and that is true. But I still did it, and I still recommend people do it. I think it's something like $65 or $70. I don't even remember, but it does cost some money, but to me it's worth doing. And you can do it before the book is published. I waited until my book was pretty much done. It had like one more round of editing to go through, but it was pretty much done. And I went ahead and registered it at that point. So you definitely want to do that. You want to make sure that you have an ISBN for your book, and you need one for the print book and you need one for the ebook. And if you do an audiobook, I think you need one for the audiobook. Don't quote me on that. I have not made an audiobook of my book yet. But I know for sure you need a separate one. Now, you can get free ISBNs through, if you print through Amazon or Ingram Spark or, any of the other ones. They do give you an option to use one of their ISBNs. I do not recommend that personally. You can do it. To me, it's easier to just buy them. But again, I publish, anywhere from 4 to 5 books a year. So I just buy them in bulk. You might not be doing that. So maybe, I don't know if you have to buy, if you can buy them singly or if they come in packs of 5 or 10 or, I'll link to their website below so you can check it out. But I would definitely buy my own ISBN. It's a little bit of money, but not a ton. It's not like a huge expense. But that way you get to put your own name or your publishing company name if you want to start a small press for yourself. You put that information in there, and then you will always own that. It won't be owned by someone else. The other thing is there's something called a PCN, which is I wrote it down, pre-assigned control number for the Library of Congress. Now, I don't know that you always necessarily need to apply for an LCCN, which is a Library of Congress control number, but I did, and that's where you register it with the Library of Congress. You get you're basically put into their cataloging database, and then you send them a copy of the book when you're done. So you, I don't think it costs anything. I'm going to have to double check that. I don't think it costs me anything, but you do have to show that you can be either an author doing it yourself, or you can be a small publisher, or you can be a large publisher. I think that I'm registered as a small publisher because I have more than one title. But if you're just doing your one book, just do your one book. I mean, you don't have to start this big complicated thing for this. So I recommend it though. It standardizes your cataloging. So like, let's say if a library wanted to buy your book, you would have a standardized record in the Library of Congress. So that's a good thing to have, in my opinion. You don't have to. It's not like a must-have, but if you're planning to sell to, libraries and bookstores, it's a good idea to do. So for what it's worth, that is what I think about that. Let's see if I have any other thing. Copyright, we covered it. Basically, that is the process in a nutshell. If you are thinking about publishing a memoir, keep those things in mind, because I think that sometimes, and I've seen this with some of my clients that I've worked with on like family legacy book projects or memoir projects, autobiography projects. Sometimes it's just for your family, and that is perfectly awesome. Like, that's great. I've helped people just, polish their books, and they're not trying to sell it to the general public. They just want to create something for their family, and I think that's wonderful. And in those cases, I help them with the editing, and I help them just publish it themselves, for their family. And 100%, that is awesome. If you are trying to make it more of a mass market or commercial kind of book, I do recommend following those extra little steps of, getting the LCCN, make sure you have your own ISBN. And now that I'm thinking about it, I will try to put a little blog post together with the steps that I've talked about here and link that below. But if you would like more information on self-publishing or even traditional publishing, let me know in the comments, and I will create more content around this. When I started this channel and when I started my website, it was mostly about freelancing and becoming a copywriter and things like that, because that was how I made money, right? So I think that's important for everyone to understand if you want to make a living as a writer. But there's also this whole other avenue of publishing that, because right now I'm in the middle of promoting my book, it's sort of top of mind. And so a lot of my other content is just sort of like fallen by the wayside because this is what I'm working on right now. So let me know in the comments. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you for joining me today, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.